Again, with Hurricane Milton bearing down on Florida, we want to reiterate that our thoughts and prayers are with everybody. I've got a lot of friends and colleagues there in Tampa Bay. Of course, we are looking at how this is going to go across the state and impact Ocala. And again, going to be speaking with Tod Wojciechowski about how OBS sales is preparing for this or getting through it, because the sale is active. And, there's just a lot to go into it. But of course, before we get to that, we did have a lot of racing action in terms of the Breeders' Cup. A lot of win in your ins. Those domestic win in your ins are done and dusted. We do have two more across the pond, but a lot to get to, John.
No question, Ren. I mean, this, if you weren't, sitting by your screen watching all these different races between California and Florida and Kentucky and Belmont at Aqueduct, then you're not really a racing fan, and you wouldn't be listening to us right now. So, but there were so many winning your in, so many important point earning races. And if it's okay with you, I spun the wheel, and I'd like to start with what I thought was, to me, one of the most intriguing races of the weekend, and that was the Grade 2 Jessamine at Keeneland, where there was not a one-way, well, there couldn't be a one-way bob, but a two-way bob. There was a three-way bob hitting the wire, and if you asked 10 people who won the race, they would give you 10 different answers. I mean, and it was just an incredible race with three horses, Mayday ready, totally justified, and why is the third place?
Destino d'Oro.
D'Oro. See, I was in France, and I wasn't, I'm picking up on my Italian. But a lot of people say that daughter of Bolt d'Oro actually ran the best race. Ren, what do you think about the Jessamine?
Well, I actually had done a cram session show on the Breeders' Cup Future Stars forecast with my husband, Matt Carothers, and international ace reporter Jess Stafford. And during the course of the show, we had to kind of speed things up. There were only two horses I wanted to talk about regarding the Jessamine, and it was Mayday Ready and Totally Justified. So I felt like I was justified. I looked pretty smart. I gave out an exacta. Yeah. But Destino d'Oro, to your point, there was a bumped and clipped heels situation. And it is funny because I talked to both Brad Cox and the trainer of Mayday Ready, Joseph Lee, and both of them thought the Destino got there first. So they were waiting for that photo to come up, and it was Mayday Ready. And the cool thing about this filly, I got up close and personal with her at the barn, as I mentioned before, and she is all class. You stand next to her, she is just looking out into the distance and taking in the surroundings and breathing in all the scents. And Joseph Lee is so kind, so understated. This is a really big horse for him, and she is coming correct with the credentials as well. I mean, this is a daughter of Tappet. She's out of Nemeralia by More Than Ready. Nemeralia, funny enough, I mean, she was beaten only 3/4 of a length in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf behind Catch a Glimpse and Alice Springs. So she's got that there, and not in that race, but Frankie Dettori had ridden her before, the mother, over in Europe. So it's really nice to see him cultivating this relationship with this filly, who is now 3 for 3 with Frankie aboard all career starts.
And the reason why personally it was so intriguing to me is we have a couple of fillies that are all gunning for that juvenile filly turf Breeders' Cup race in a few weeks. And Ren, I know you're not a regular on the show, but you are a regular listen to the show.
Yes, so I am.
You recognize that I rarely say the B word. I rarely say Breeders' Cup.
I know, you're superstitious.
I'm superstitious, but now
look at me in my horseshoes.
Exactly, upside down. Yeah, but now all the winning your in races are over in that division, so I can start to say Breeders' Cup Juvenile Filly. It's really just because you're here. It has nothing to do with the fact that Joe's not here. But yeah, that division in particular is of near and dear to my heart. Yeah. We talked a little bit about pre-show about how there just doesn't seem like there's as many international horses coming over for the juvenile filly turf race. Like last year, Portofino, came over and ran a bang up race, for Medallion Racing and their partners, and Donica O'Brien, who trains the filly. And I just don't see that that en masse group of horses coming over. There's certainly some talented fillies coming over, but it doesn't look like there's going to be 4 or 5 or 6 like there have been in years past.
Yeah, well, there is one monster who looks to be coming over, and that, of course, is the 4-for-4 Lake Victoria for Aidan O'Brien.
And has the pedigree, both the human pedigree as well as the equine pedigree for sure. So as things start to play out over the next couple of weeks, I believe, if I remember correctly, and you would be the expert on this, but October 21st is when the pre-entries come out for all of
it's going to be
races?
somewhere around there. I don't have the exact date right in front of me, but that sounds about right.
It's October 21st. I was giving you a softball.
Oh, you're giving me a pass.
Because you're new to this.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Thank you for not throwing me to the wolves there.
Exactly. What other races did you think were of interest or of intrigue where you were like, wow, either that horse won the race and I'm really impressed, or there's a sleeper here that 4 weeks from now I'm going to be giving out to my corporate sponsors that pay me to give them picks?
You already know where I'm going to go with this. You already know where I'm going to go.
Go ahead.
How can you not?
Okay. All 30,000 people who listen, who download and subscribe, by the way, don't forget to subscribe, to the show, are on pins and needles right now, the edges of their seat. They don't need to buy the whole chair because they only need the edge.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So if anybody has ever listened to me, you already know that I am obsessed with a certain family in our thoroughbred breeding book. Is
that the Green family, Ren?
It is the Green family, actually. Yes, absolutely. John and Len, man. But yeah, Family 1X, that's the tail female family of La Troyenne. And I keep pushing this statistic because it blows my mind, because you have to think of it this way, right? When we talk about family numbers, what are family numbers? Well, Bruce Lowe, back in the late 1800s, he came up with numbering these female families, these taproot families, and assigning them a number based on how many classic winners they were giving. So 1 being the best, and then you trickle on down. And originally there was 40 something horses. But then that expanded out to 70 something. And then they added American horses and, just around the world, different families. Now, that being said, I don't look at the family numbers in that regard going, okay, well, this has to be the best because it's family 1, because think of all the different things that have happened since they were assigned in the first place. And maybe the methodology itself wasn't exactly scientific. But that all being said, it does enable me to go right away, 1X, that is La Troyenne, or, various numbers to various famous families. In this case, the reason why I bring it up, after I've now told you how many families there are, it's a lot, it's prolific. Family 1X, if you exclude 2023, because there wasn't a 1X baby in there, 2022, back 5 years, 4 of the 5 winners of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile specifically are from Family 1X. So Forte, Corniche, Essential Quality, and Game Winner are all Family 1X. Who's a 1X now that's got a shot there at the Breeders' Cup Juvenile? Well, East Avenue, who won the Claiborne Breeders' Futurity emphatically. What a specimen. I went to the barn to go see him up close and personal with Brendan Walsh. This horse is gorgeous in every single way. And what a wonderful temperament as well. And the pedigree, it's one of those ones you want to root for. I mean, this is a son of Medaglia d'Oro, and then his mother is a half sister to a horse near and dear to so many people's hearts, Cody's Wish.
Yep. And you're right. The 1X just continually pops up and pops.
Does it not? I'm going to get you to get one of these days.
All the time. I wish I could. The problem is you're so famous. I keep
selling them.
And you keep selling them that now it's starting to pop up. Like, I looked on the Facebook Tipton Digital, and in one of the notes there, it says, Ren Carothers says that we're a 1X. So you're
does it? No.
Yeah, you're adding value.
Yeah, right.
You should trademark it, quite frankly.
I don't know if I believe that, because most people, I feel like, look at me like I have 2 heads when I say it, but it's statistical data.
Right.
I don't know how you ignore that with that type of consistency within a 5-year span to have 4 winners when you think of how hard it is to even get in the gate.
Well, I think I think it's a prolific family. You've proven that time and time again. But that being said, there are a lot of them out there. There's a lot of 1X out there. So I think if you actually looked at the stats, I'm going to push back a little bit. If you look at the stats and you said, yes, they've come up with all of these great runners and recent runners and early developing runners. But if you look at them as a pool, I don't know. I don't know the answer to this. Maybe Steph could come up with the statistics on this. That sounds like a good project for her.
We'll make
Number one fan, Steph Justify. And you look at that pool of
I
horses.
saw her there. We had a big hug after Immersive
Yes,
one.
no, she's awesome.
Yeah.
If you look at like the 1X horses in totality versus the other families in totality, I think that they would have a statistic edge, but not quite to the extent that I think that you're excited about. Your enthusiasm portrays.
No, I think they aren't as prolific as you might think. In terms of, I mean, in the sales book, even if you look, I mean, they're there, but it has to be also there's also more of a specificity in some of the branches, because remember Latch Ryan had a couple.
Wait, what was that word?
Specific. I can't even say it. You know what I'm trying to say.
No, I can't say it.
I can't say now. I'm tripping over my own teeth. That's been a lifelong problem for me.
You're so excited about being on the show.
Specific. I can't do it. You got Wojciechowski out of me. Specificity.
Okay. You know what the funny thing about it, Ren, is that if it was a horse's name, you and I would be able to say it like in our sleep. Like it wouldn't be a big deal. There's so many names of horses that in real life I would not be able to say if they were just a vocabulary word. That being one of them. Anyway, we digress. What other races?
The only other one I can think of right now, as far as the 2-year-old colts go toward the Breeders' Cup, is Getaway Car. He's a 1X.
Yep. And a prolific horse out on the West Coast. So speaking of the West Coast,
yes,
which some people would say is the best coast. I don't, but
I like the East Coast. But
I like the East Coast.
I did think that it was pretty cool to see Citizen Bull move up from the Del Mar Futurity into that winner's position. I mean, that's a nice horse.
It isn't, and he went gate to wire. Garcia rode him very well. I think 23-4, 47, 112-2, and basically kind of put everyone to sleep. This was what I would call a merry-go-round race, because basically once everyone got into position after the first quarter of the race, that's pretty much where they ended up. Citizen Bull went gate to wire. Getaway Car was, kind of sitting second and didn't change. McKinsey Street was like third, fourth, kind of going back and forth, and ended up, third. So it wasn't necessarily, to me, it wasn't an exciting race to watch because the race was over at the quarter mile. That being said, the Into Mischief Citizen Bull certainly, improved going now from 5.5 to 7 to 1.16 miles, and is running, races out there on the Breeders' Cup home track of Del Mar. Obviously, this was a Santa Anita, but his first 2 starts were at Del Mar. And Getaway Car, I thought it was interesting. They took the blinkers off.
Yeah.
After winning his first 2 starts and then running kind of, a subpar race in the Del Mar Futurity, they went ahead and took the blinkers off. Do you think that affected him, good or bad?
It's hard to say with 2-year-olds, right?
Yeah,
because they're just finding themselves, and they can get kind of mental. So you try one thing, you try another. And when I say mental, I don't mean mental like humans. Like if we can get mental, it's like right. But horses, they can get distracted. Sometimes they're there for the focus, just keep them sharp. Sometimes they do better when you take them off because they're more relaxed, because they feel like they can really see everything that's happening around them. But going back to Citizen Bull, I will say he's got the Breeders' Cup ped cred, because in that pedigree, you've got Favorite Trick.
Right. And what a phenomenally early superstar he was. I mean, I remember was that the horse that put Pat Byrne on the map? Was it? I
believe so. Yeah. I talked to Jill about this horse before, and just horse of the year at 2 years old.
Yeah. It's rarely seen and well deserved on that. Any other races in Kentucky? Because you guys were there, right? You and Matt were...
it was. I will tell you, just going back to the East Avenue situation, there was an objection. I went to go get some footage of the horse before he came over from the track onto the turf course where they do the winner's circle presentation, and I saw that Tyler Gaffleone was off, and I thought, what happened? Did he fall? And then I realized there was an objection that was long too, waiting out what was going to happen with the steward's decision. And so you saw Brendan and the Godolphin team and Tyler standing around, and we're just waiting. And there was this great moment though where Brendan walked over to the horse and he was giving the horse some loving pats and whatnot. And then, of course, when they said no change, there was a sigh of relief and everything. And it was just very heartening to see that, however. But yeah, I will also say another big moment was the Bourbon Stakes. on Sunday. Will Walden, that colt, when he came back, and I'm sorry, the name right now, Minaret Station.
Right.
They're walking up to meet the horse to bring him over to, and for the presentation. And they were so happy. And, we're going to California. We're going to the Breeders' Cup, right? So in addition to, all the excitement about going to the Breeders' Cup, there was also this very sweet moment with rider Christian Torres and his beautiful wife, Valerie, and their beautiful daughter, embracing each other once he got off the horse. He's always got his family with him, and it's so cool to see the support.
Yeah, between that and Will winning that race, the winning you're in, and I don't know if you caught this, but Paco Lopez won his 4,000th career winner at Keeneland, which was great. We thought it was going to be us in the allowance race a couple races beforehand. Paco was on, and I'm just so happy for him that he got it because look, I've been rough on him on the show, and Joe and I have been rough on him, because
I think a lot of people.
He was kind of a careless rider. And he, for whatever reason, this year in 2024, I think he had his come to Jesus moment. And whether it was like he, looked at himself in the mirror and said, I need to be a little bit more believe in my skills and not be as reckless, or just, as we all get older, sometimes some of us mature, and he's feeling it. But for whatever reason, hat off to you, Paco Lopez, for your 4,000th victory. That is not an easy mountain to climb.
No, not at all. And I will tell you, I do have a funny story. When I was at Tampa Bay covering one of the big days of racing there, I turned around and I saw one of the riders all suited up to go, helmet on, and I was like, oh, hey, Danny, because real quick, I just glanced. I thought it was Danny Centeno. And he's like, he just smiled and took it. And then I realized right after he walked away to go get on the horse, I was like, that was Paco. And so I told Paco, listen, I realized I just glanced really quickly. I saw the chocolate brown eyes. I thought, so Danny was the first name that came to mind. He goes, you think I'm Danny Centeno? Like, he just started bagging on Danny to Danny's face. It was good stuff. It was good stuff.
Nice.
Competitive on and off the horses.
Exactly. Always. No offense to Danny, because he's a good solid rider, especially at the Tampa meet.
No. He was insulting looks.
Yeah.
Like, you're both great looking.
I get that. I understand. So the other race to me that that I thought was of great interest and more for what's going to happen next was Idiomatic winning the Spinster. Emphatically. I mean, look, the horse, that was the race that Brad Cox and Judd Montt, were eyeing as the springboard for the distaff. The horse jumped up and improved and went from a 96 buyer to a 102 buyer. Again, that's not the only indicator, but it is a good one. But Idiomatic, and Joe and I have talked about this in the past, this year, 2024, has been a gift from the racing gods by allowing us to watch Idiomatic run again, because Judd Montt could have just as easily taken their homebred and gone and put her in the breeding shed and put her in foal to one of the top stallions in the world, and nobody would have blinked twice, because that is the current state of the industry right now, is that you take a grade 1 winner, a champion, and you say thanks for the memories, and you make them put them into the breeding shed. And they didn't have to do that. And all she's done in her, what I would call her encore year, is run 5 times, 3 wins in 2 seconds. And is the, dare I say, the most legitimate horse to take on Torpedo Anna if Torpedo Anna actually runs in the distaff. Yeah. Please.
Well, I'm almost certain that we're going to see Torpedo Anna in the distaff. I had after the Travers, I kept putting her on because I'm one of the voters for the classic rankings. Currently, I keep putting City of Troy first, just FYI, and then Fierceness.
And that's a nice humble brag, Ren. It
depends. We'll see how he runs. But I had been putting her on that list as well. But then Kenny made it pretty clear that no, we're going to go for the distaff for sure. And that filly, the Grizzly, I mean, you gotta love her. That she's all guts, all heart. She really seems to relish winning races. And as far as Idiomatic goes, you're absolutely right. They've been so sporting with her, with Judd Montt and Brad. And I actually talked to him before the race. And, it's fun when you do have a horse like this and you're going to defend it to title. This is the second time she's won the Spinster. So let's see now she can double up on the distaff, right? And you're totally correct. 102 buyer, 6.5 length win. And you got to give her credit too. I mean, out of the personal ensign, Raging Sea went on to win the Belle Dame yesterday or on October 6th. And the figure there, not too, it was an 86.
Yeah, it wasn't impressive. It wouldn't have made the top 5 in this race.
No. So we gotta stay clear on there. And then we did see Soul of an Angel go and win out of the personal ensign as well. And the Princess Rooney, that was a 3.25 length score, 93 buyer for her. But I mean, clearly Idiomatic and Torpedo Anna are gonna be the headliners of the distaff. And as far as you brought up, when Idiomatic does go to the breeding shed, what a benefit she's going to be to the thoroughbred breed. Hopefully, I mean, you never know till they have that first foal. But here you've got a daughter, a Curlin, and she is from the family of Best in Show. And we know, anybody who knows pedigrees knows that family is just prolifically talented.
Even though it's not a 1X.
Even though it's not 1X. My favorite families are 1X, and I'll take an 8F any day, all day.
Right, exactly. And speaking of daughters,
yes.
I'm going to lead into a little bit of a controversial conversation that happened, and that was Tepin's daughter, Grateful, earned a Group 1, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, the Prix de Royale.
Excuse you.
Excuse me. Yes.
Yes.
Always.
And believe it or not, when I was I was in France, and when I was there, that was the talk of the week in racing was, whether or not there was going to be a great winner, at Longchamp, and whether or not they were going to bring it over. So let's talk a little bit about Grateful and the daughter of Tepin. And I think what overshadowed the win was the fact that, kind of by accident, I think it was found out that Tepin had passed away. And not recently, Ren, like in 2023, she passed away.
No, I know it's hard. And I understand why fans would be taken aback, a bit bewildered by that news coming out in sort of that passing way. But we do have to understand at the end of the day, these horses are their horses, and you do have the right to keep things private or share as you see fit in regarding the stewardship of them. But I do understand why people would feel like this was something that they would have wanted to know about. But the thing that I do take away is just the outpouring of love we have seen for Tepin, and she is so deserving.
Right. And was one of the horses, if I remember correctly, that, was doing well here, went over to England and ran in a huge race there, and was one of the first horses of recent memory to go ahead and win there. And Mark Cassidy obviously is our top trainer and is a friend, and he was surprised to hear about the news and crushed to hear about the news that Tepin had passed. And look, if the former trainer doesn't know, then it wasn't meant for public consumption. And I can tell you that, as an owner, we get inquiries about horses that, from breeders, and, or maybe somebody owns a piece of the family and they would like to know what's going on. Obviously not at the level of a Tepin, but, it's still important to them to know what's going on in the family. And we get, some shock, also pushback from people when they say, well, how come you didn't tell me that this horse passed? Or how come you didn't tell me that you retired this horse? And quite frankly, it's none of your business. I mean, I understand from a human level standpoint.
Oh yeah, of course.
That especially when you're taking care of the horse and it becomes a part of your family and everything, that your heart is broken when you hear bad news about the horse. But I stand steadfast saying that, we have an obligation to take care of the horse. We have an obligation to make sure that horse is cared for to the best of its ability, irrespective of what it's doing, if it's retired or if it's breeding for us or anywhere in between. But I don't have the responsibility to call every single person that touched the horse. And I don't want to sound heartless, but
I know.
That it's an unfortunate thing. So and we're obviously, a little more open with communication, being on the podcast and here in the States, than Coolmore is. But I would Coolmore never came out and said, it's not your, for you to know. It's not our obligation to tell you that. I'm saying that. I'm saying that as the owner, it's not my obligation to make an announcement. Yes, she was probably one of the most famous fillies in recent history. Yes, there's stake races named after her. Yes, she was an important filly for so many reasons, domestically and internationally. Sold for $8 million when her racing career was over. So she was more of a public figure than most horses would be necessarily. But again, I don't think it's their responsibility to announce or have a press release or anything like that, because quite frankly, other than from a humanitarian standpoint, it doesn't benefit to do that.
Right. Well, I mean, and that's the thing too. I mean, people have to understand there's nothing secretive here. She was with a farm that gives the best of care to their horses. They love their horses, the consummate horse people. You talk to any of them, they know the horse top to bottom. They know the lineages going all back. They know everything they need to know to take the best of care of their horses. And the reason I bring up lineage, because, knowing the quirks of a horse, knowing what they may, have certain issues with, whatever, they know how to take care of the horse completely. And so there's no reason to be like, oh my gosh, well, why wouldn't they tell us that? There's no reason for that.
Yeah, there's nothing nefarious here.
No,
there's nothing that they were trying to hide.
Exactly. There's so many, and people maybe outside of it don't realize that there are just so many ways that a mare or any horse can pass away. I know she was only 13 years old, but there's colic, there's laminitis. You could take a bad step in the field,
right? You get kicked in the
complications, head. Anything. And yes, anything. And I mean, there have been really random things that have happened. I've heard of horse getting struck by lightning, just tons of things.
Yep. It almost makes you not want to own horses.
No, you still got to, not quite. Like I still love them. I'm still going to go, but no, there's so much that goes into it. I mean, once you retire, it's not just like, oh, you just, run out in a pasture every day. There's still care that goes in every single day for that horse and making sure they're living a happy life. But accidents happen, and who knows, it could have absolutely been anything. It is their prerogative to share. And I'm just thankful that we've seen the outpouring of love for Tep, and that we have had that respect is still there all these years after her retirement. Coming up next on Rail Talk, we're going to be speaking with Tod Wojciechowski. He is the director of sales at OBS. They've got that sale going on. A lot of yearlings you're going to want to keep your eye on, but they also are doing this through Hurricane Milton. We'll find out how everything is going on the other side.